Magicians study and hopefully perform magic their entire lives, but what is it worth? I'm not being morbid, I'm genuinely curious. Most magicians won't ever document their life in magic. But there are some magical creators who have documented their creations and actions or were interesting enough that someone else did it for them. And of course, if you're going to document a lifetime of magic, what better way to do it than in a book? So in this episode, we'll be talking about books that help us answer this question of what a lifetime in magic is worth. Books you're probably going to want to have in your library. And the reason for that is that these books are different than the typical magic book. Let's pause here for a second. If you've been around the channel for any length of time, you know that I love magic books. That's what this whole channel is about. I love the knowledge, the texture, the very idea of learning from a book. Even the smell is intoxicating. And I know you love magic books too. But there are two types of magic books out there, and one of them is worth way more to me than the other. The first type of magic book is the traditional one. A magic creator comes up with a trick, road tests it, performs it around, and decides to publish it. Maybe they even do this a few times and come up with an entire book. This is the normal path of sharing magic in the written word, and it's certainly stood the test of time. There's certainly nothing wrong with this type of release, and frankly, it's what I spend most of my time reading, studying, performing, and reviewing. But there's another type of magic book that stands head and shoulders above a traditional magic book. This type of book will usually cost you a lot more than the traditional book, but that's because it's worth more. It contains true road-tested material, revisions, updates, material that has sometimes taken the creator around the world. This variety of book is typically written towards the end of a performer's career, or maybe even posthumously. Sometimes it consolidates traditional magic books written over their lifetime into one large volume. And often it contains elements of their life outside of magic to help tell the full story about their creative and passion-filled journey in magic. If you've experienced this type of book, you know it and you love it. They're really not all that common, and many of them at this point are out of print. But that doesn't change the fact that they're worth acquiring, studying, loving, and performing. Whether you know this feeling or not, let's look at 5 books that I feel exemplify a lifetime in magic. And I'll share how much I spent to acquire them and give you a general idea of how much you'll expect to pay if you want to study these types of books. Without any further ado, here are my top 5 lifetime magic books. Starting us out at number 5 is Making Magic by Martin Lewis. I did a complete review of this book when it first came out, and it is chock full of great magic. This book was published just before Martin's passing, so it's literally his life's work. And you'll find all kinds of amazing thinking from a brilliant mind and a true performer. I don't have time to go through everything that it teaches, but here are just a few highlights. He tips Cartographic, his animated drawing of a rising card that can be ripped off the pad of paper and given out as a souvenir. He gives away both the close-up and the parlor version of this. This trick was so good that David Copperfield actually performed it on one of his TV magic specials. And it's a classic in the repertoires of working pros everywhere. He also teaches you 2 versions of his Technicolor Prediction, a mind-blowing forecast of the future with both a close-up and a parlor version. Throughout the book, you'll learn to construct all types of utilities, props, gimmicks, and other devices. Hence the name Making Magic. He invented ways to express his magical creativity with a variety of props, including silks, cards, egg bags, cigarette papers, jumbo cards, M&Ms, etc. Some of the items were published before or released as individual tricks. But like I said before, you're getting the most up-to-date thinking on almost everything this brilliant mind created. This is one of the titles on this list that's actually still in print. I paid $100 to acquire this book from the publisher back in 2022, but you can still buy it to support his widow and family for $125. Coming in at number 4, I have The Essential Die Vernon. Spoiler alert, this one is long out of print. And unlike some of the others on this list, this is exclusively a compilation with just a few extras. It's a collection of most of his previous works, the Die Vernon Book of Magic, the Inner Card Trilogy, Die Vernon's Ultimate Secrets of Card Magic, his tribute to Nate Leipzig, Malini and his magic, and the Symphony of the Rings. It's 1,100 pages and it has the dubious distinction of being one of the few books that has made my leg fall asleep as it rested on my lap while reading it. If you've watched this far into the video, I don't need to introduce you to the professor, but this collection has kept me busy for a very long time and is where I originally learned the Elmsley count while studying his Twisting the Aces. But that's obviously not the only classic taught here in this book. You'll learn things like The Last Trick of Dr. Jacob Daly, The Cups and Balls, McDonald's Aces, Do As I Do, Card Stab, and more. Obviously, if you're into close-up magic, there's probably no greater resource than this book. When it was in print, it sold as a beefy hardback for $125. Frankly, a steal for what you get. But I got it for even more of a steal because I paid $60 in 2015. Number 3 on my list of lifetime books is Anemon's Enigma. This 720-page tome pays homage to one of my favorite creators and who I consider to be the father of modern mentalism. But he's not just a boring mentalist. He created all kinds of magic, and it's here in this book. This book was published by the Miracle Factory, and if you haven't already encountered one of their books, they're a sight to behold. The book takes you through most of Anemon's regrettably short life and career. In spite of his magically creative genius, he was a very troubled individual, and he took his own life at only 34 years old. But what he left behind is a treasure trove of magic and mentalism. He was not only nonstop thinking about magic, he put it into print and gave us one of the most beloved magic periodicals of all time, The Jinx. Anemon's Enigma holds almost nothing back of his creation, so you won't find the works of contributors to The Jinx. And the only exception to that is that it does not include his bullet catch method. The editors thought that it was too risky to publish, and even though the method is known, they opted not to publish it. Oh well, I guess you can't have everything. But if you're serious about studying one of the all-time great thinkers on the subject of mentalism, you need to get this book. You'll learn tricks like the game-changing fourth-dimensional telepathy, a feature in my own mentalism show, $1,000 test card location. But more than just the tricks, this book is thick with the history of the time. This magic and mentalism was primarily conceived in the 1930s and 40s, and you'll get to see the original marketing, the prices at which he was selling, and what people were saying about it at the time. Through it all, you'll get to know Anemon, the creator, in a way that you just can't in a smaller book. I bought this book new from the publisher back in 2019 for $125. It's now $150, and amazingly enough, still in print. At number 2, we have The Secret Ways of Al Baker. Yes, this is another Miracle Factory book, but it's hard not to have more than one on this list because that's primarily what they do. They print magnificent posthumous collections of a creator's lifetime in magic. I've said it before, and it's still true. If I had a time machine that allowed me to go back and spend one day with a magician, I would choose to go back and spend that day with Al Baker. He was such a character, full of humor and incredibly diverse. He was not only a successful children's performer, he was also one of the early retailers of his own magical secrets with a successful mail order business. In addition, he pioneered a lot of mentalism techniques, including the now infamous live peek during a center tear, a staple of my everyday carry. And before invisible thread was even a thing, Al Baker was creating magic no one could even conceive by using human hair. He was a visionary, comedian, ventriloquist, photographer, and knew almost everyone in the New York magic scene. In fact, he was a mentor to the aforementioned Ted Anemon after a brief spat, but that's a story for another day. And he served as the Dean of the Society of American Magicians for almost a decade in the middle of the 20th century. The Secret Ways of Al Baker contains all of the books he published, like Pet Secrets, Mental Magic, and Magical Ways and Means, as well as dozens of individual effects he sold to the magic consumer. I scored this amazing book for $100 on eBay back in 2012, but interestingly enough, it's still also available, albeit at a much heftier price tag of $250. Before we get into the number 1 book on this list, if you're looking for these lifetime magic books or other books that are out of print, I want to recommend that you shop with the sponsor of today's video, Don's Magic and Books. I personally have bought out-of-print books from Don, some of these lifetime books of magic, like The Secrets of Brother John Hammond. Don's mission statement says it all. He wants to keep the information in magic books circulating for as long as possible. And he does that by offering up hard-to-find used books in excellent condition and even better prices. If you're interested in acquiring these types of books for your magic library, head over to his website at donsmagicandbooks.com. If you're like me, you'll get addicted to shopping with Don, especially since he offers fast and free shipping if you meet certain thresholds in the United States, and you really just never know what you're going to find on there. So check it out often because he's always adding new books as he acquires new collections. Back to the number 1 book on my list of lifetime magic books. Finally, the number 1 book on my set of lifetime magic books. This is King of the Hill, the untouchable goat, the pinnacle of a lifetime in magic. I'm talking about Stuart James in print, and the James File, Volumes 1 and 2. Yes, this is cheating since it's more than one book, but it all goes together. These 3 volumes are over 2,700 pages of magic and require a separate 122-page index just to cover everything in them. This index has to be broken up into 3 different sections: general, names, and tricks. I don't know that I could appropriately categorize everything in Stuart James' remarkable output, but suffice it to say he left no stone unturned. He was constantly creating and sharing magic, and these books are a love letter from his friends like the late Max Maven, collecting all of his known work into 3 gigantic books. They not only chronicle almost all of his tricks, but they also provide context, correspondence, and extra thoughts. You'll discover his odd method for creating magic with 3 imaginary friends that came from the lonely world in which he grew up. He created a lot of procedural yet devious card magic, and many of his tricks found their way into the hearts and performance repertoires of close-up magicians everywhere. I'm talking about tricks like Further Than That, Mirror Skill, and more. And he wasn't just a card guy. He had a lot of rope routines. There are interesting stunts, puzzles, bets. If there was a magical application, he explored it. He also came up with one of the greatest spooky effects ever created, Cephalogia, which has spawned many variations over the years. But the original is still great, and you can learn to make it yourself. I'm not going to be able to go through everything, but with 2,700 pages across 3 different books, there's obviously something for everyone. His output was incredibly prolific, and he never stopped being curious. He invented and accepted challenges to create magic with different constraints. This led to some very inventive solutions, as well as a diversity of output that keeps him from being a one-trick pony. This particular set of books would have set you back over $300 back when they were available. However, they're long out of print, and you can pretty much only get them on the secondary market. I paid only $215 for all 4 books across the span of 2012 through 2013 by shopping on eBay. So who knows, maybe you too can get lucky and acquire them for your library. You might be asking, Jeff, what's your point in all of this? The point is that it's hard to put a number on a lifetime of magical instruction. Based on my research and experience as a magical consumer, it's likely to cost you over $150 and probably over $200 for someone's lifetime of magical creativity. But if you respect and like the creator, it's typically well worth the investment in both time and money to learn from someone who's lived out a magical life. And who knows, you might just be inspired to live out your own magical life through what you learn and apply from them. So what is a magical life worth? That's up to you and your budget to decide. But I've given you some of the data that I personally have spent and would spend to study these masters. Obviously, some of your top 5 are probably left off my list, so let me hear from you down in the comments below with creators that you think have excellent lifetime magic books. As always, my friends, I appreciate you watching, and until next time, keep reading.